Hey, Premier Planet, Justin Barlow here with Rockin' Randy, and before we get to the Premier Planet podcast with José Acosta and Anakin, we want to drop you folks a quick line just to say thank you, number one, for supporting Premier Pro Wrestling here on YouTube, but number two, this podcast, Premier Planet Podcast, is already up on our Patreon. Now, our Patreon is where you can get exclusive content like this a week early. Yeah, you can get it here free on YouTube, but it's been on Patreon for a week already.
Yep.
So
in addition, you also get, and more to come, also other free content.
Yeah.
And exclusive content.
Exactly.
And again, we appreciate all the support, anybody that supports on Patreon, and also just watch us on YouTube and giving us a thumbs up is nice as well.
Yeah. And so without further ado, here's Anakin and Jose. Premier patrons, welcome back to another installment of the Premier Planet Podcast, the podcast exclusively for our generous supporters here on Patreon. I'm Justin Barlow, and what a show we have for you today, because we're bringing you not just one, but two PPW stars. They are bona fide main eventers, multi-time tag team champions. They've been partners, they've been rivals, but through it all, they've risen up to become one of, and some might even say the most dominant tag team in Premier Pro Wrestling history. Anakin and El Guerrero, José Acosta, are with us today in our first ever tag team episode. I'm excited for the opportunity to sit down and talk with these guys. I know you guys are excited to hear from them, so let's dive in with Anakin and Jose. So Anakin and Jose, multiple-time PPW World Tag Team Champions. Anakin is the 2019 Challenge Pro Champion. They're in the studio today. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and talk to the Premier Planet. Let's dive right into it. Same question I always like to start with, because it's the one that I know I'm the most curious about. I think everyone listening is the most curious about. What is it that made you decide to pursue a career in this crazy world of professional wrestling? And Jose, why don't we start with you, because you're closest, and then we can pass it on over to Anakin.
I've actually been watching wrestling, particularly WWE. I was about 8 years old, and I'm 32 now. So it's been a good while now. I grew up just loving the storylines, getting involved in the storylines. I actually believed it was 100% real up until I was about 12 years old, 13 years old. And then at that point, I was already transitioning into kind of backyard wrestling with a few of my cousins. You know, chairs, ladders, trampolines, pools, wherever it wouldn't hurt to slam somebody. We'd definitely be doing it, but it's always kind of been a dream of mine to be out there performing, doing something I've loved doing, honestly, just messing around with my cousins. I actually did not know there was any wrestling schools around in the Chicagoland area from where I live, so I never really looked too much into it. I did my full 4 years in the Navy and got out in 2010. It wasn't until about 2017 that I saw the ad on Facebook for Premier Pro Wrestling Academy. And I figured I was probably in the best shape of my life, going to the gym 5-6 days a week. And I just shot that email and got the training session, and been doing it for about 2 years coming up now, so there's really no end in sight as far as I can see.
So pretty much starting out the way most of us started out, just being a fan, and one day you have the opportunity and you decide to run with it, and hey, here you are. Exactly. Multiple-time tag team champion. So dreams do come true, folks. So Anakin, why don't we go ahead and throw it over to you? Same question. Why'd you decide to get involved in the world of professional wrestling?
Yeah, well, growing up, my dad was the one who, introduced me. I've been watching it since I was a baby. But growing up, I idolized guys like Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle. And my mom wasn't a huge fan of it. But my dad, he took me to Raw a couple times. I've been to lots of live events since I started watching wrestling a long time ago, and it was always the same for me. I never a shred of doubt in my mind that everything was going on was real life, and and so I Same with Jose. I have 4 brothers at home, so we never had any shortage of wrestlers in our house. We had all sorts of crazy matches that I'm sure you can find on some old video camera somewhere. Well, I guess what really got me in an actual wrestling ring. So back in, I think, 2015, 2016, my mother got cancer, and it was kind of a process where I was a ripe young teenager still at that time. So it was for dealing with that, dealing with those kinds of emotion was difficult for me. And she passed away in 2017. And that kind of after that was when I was looking for something to fill my head. I was looking for something to get me back into the real world. And originally I looked at another promotion in Iowa. I heard some okay things about it, but it cost more money than I could afford. And same thing here. I shot an email to the academy, and I started, I think, in July, and really the rest is history. I've been doing this for probably about 2.5 years now, so it's great. Yeah, so I'm really blessed to still be doing what I'm doing.
Sounds like both of you guys, coming from quite a storied personal history. I mean, Jose, you were in the military, and you've also got 3 kids you're looking after, and then Anakin, your family struggles that you've been through. But isn't that the greatest thing about pro wrestling? Just like how much it can take you away from all those things and just let you live out a dream and let you get lost for a little bit. I mean, I've always loved that about it. But I want to piggyback off of something you said, Anakin. You mentioned some of your influences, so why don't we dive into that a little bit? You mentioned Rey Mysterio and some other guys like that. So I'd like to know more about who you guys, grew up watching and idolizing, and who, when you were coming in, you really not mimic, but some guys you kind of wanted to live up to.
Sure. I mean, there's obviously many greats in WWE and across various promotions as well. But honestly, I started watching right around the middle of the Attitude Era, so a big part of what I was watching then and idolizing primarily was The Rock, when he was really starting to get up on his own. Stone Cold Steve Austin at the time was and is still probably the greatest. The Undertaker, Triple H, guys like that. But honestly, I didn't really feel like I could actually do it myself, or that I saw myself in a ring, until I actually started following Eddie Guerrero once he joined WWE. I didn't see so much his WCW days and prior, but once he kicked into that Latino Heat character and he just lived it, like he was Latino Heat, and he just got every funny bone in my body just going, even though he was a heel, doing all sorts of terrible stuff, but he would have me laughing. And I would love that about him, and that he was always there. He was ready. He always gave everything in the ring. And that's probably one of my biggest idols would be Eddie Guerrero. And then followed closely by AJ Styles. Honestly, I've been watching him since his TNA days, so very big influence on me.
Yeah, you just mentioned 2 of my personal favorites. I mean, Eddie Guerrero, you said you didn't watch him much in WCW, but, definitely go and check some of that out now with the network. I mean, especially his stuff with guys like Mysterio. I mean, it's just creme de la creme of amazingness. And yeah, AJ Styles, I've been a big fan of his since, probably the mid-2000s when I started watching TNA. But it's not about me, it's about you guys. So Anakin, I'll throw it over to you. And so who were some of your primary influences growing up?
Yeah, well, like I said, when I was a kid, my favorites were just Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle. A lot for the people who were, more than what they could do. Because I don't think I ever imagined, myself donning an American flag and doing any of that stuff. But it was a lot more. It was a lot more about how Angle carried himself, and just kind of distilling that onto me. I try and mimic some of that confidence. even though he was one of the bigger guys. And then, starting when I was growing up and I kind of figured that I wasn't going to be as big as everybody else, that's when I kind of was able to come into my element about probably two of my biggest idols of all time, Shawn Michaels and Jeff Hardy. Because Jeff Hardy, I watched a lot in his prime, when he actually became world champion, WWE champion. And it was that feeling of being the underdog that I kind of knew that I had. And then, this is the same thing with Shawn Michaels, even though he rose in quite a different fashion. Just two of the smallest guys making some of the biggest impact. And then when I started wrestling, when I kind of started coming into myself as a character, I found a lot of my wrestling in, like you were mentioning, old WCW guys. So we're talking pre-Latino Heat. We're talking Dean Malenko. And Rey Mysterio, some of those matches that they had are the best I've ever seen. Yeah, so Malenko, Mysterio, even some of the lesser known luchadors like Juventud Guerrero, La Parka when he was in WCW, Jericho and Benoit, guys like that. So really, yeah, just realizing that being the smallest is not the end of the world for me, and in a lot of ways it could actually be an advantage. That's something that really distilled a lot of confidence in me, and it's something that I think I carry to this day.
Yeah, and so a lot of cruiserweight influences between you guys and many who kind of broke out of that mold to become world champions. Guys like Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, and you even mentioned guys like Dean Malenko, who might be a little bit underrated, but whose ring work was just fantastic. And those old, those, I shouldn't say old, but I'm referring back to the 90s here. The cruiserweight division in WCW is really what got me into cruiserweight wrestling. And one guy who I love, who I feel like doesn't get a lot of due, is Ultimo Dragon. I remember watching him on Nitro and just being like, this dude's awesome. He's like got the mask and like doing flips and. But yeah, you can definitely see the influences that you guys mentioned in your ring work, but you keep it in a way where you're not like a carbon copy either. Yeah. And obviously, Jose, you carry the Guerrero moniker, but you're not Eddie Guerrero, and you're not trying to be. And that's definitely something that you want. You want to. You want to be able to pull from, all these other influences. I mean, even I do it, guys like Howard Finkel, Mark Lorenz. But moving on here, now you guys grew up watching it. You had this dream of one day becoming wrestlers yourselves. Now that you've actually had a chance to experience it and you're living out that dream, I want to know, what are some of your favorite things about being a professional wrestler?
I guess for me, it would have to be that you can kind of use wrestling, and I'll use this as my own personal experience also, and Anakin as well, as he said earlier, that you can kind of take any of your frustrations, any thoughts that you have from just dealing with the real world, and you can come into the ring and just completely forget about it, because when that bell rings, your focus is on putting out the best match that you can put out for the fans that are there watching. And you can sometimes draw your emotion, and I've done it just through some negative stuff that I was going through with my kids, obviously, with custody and stuff like that. I was in a very dark mindset, so that kind of helped me push myself to be a little bit more aggressive in the ring. Not trying to kill anybody or anything, but it gives you that little extra push to where your character looks a little bit more believable in what you are doing in there. Just because you do have that raw emotion that you can kind of bring into the matchup, and I think it touches a lot of people also when they feel that, and it gets them more involved. And then at the end of the day, you can just walk out, and honestly, after a matchup, I feel just like a brand new person, honestly. Like, my mindset is just reset, and I'm always looking for something new to do, or I'm always trying to see how I can switch my style up. Like you said, I pull from Eddie Guerrero, but I try not to copy exactly what he is, and I don't believe anybody really can. So I'm just pulling from various places, various emotions, and just to build the character that you see in your own mind, and then having success, and to see that success, it's really rewarding to me.
I mean, no matter what you're feeling on a certain day, the roar of a crowd is the ultimate high, I think. So, Anakin, how about you?
Yeah, firstly, whenever I walk through that curtain and I hear, doesn't matter however many people there are out there, I hear, you hear them cheer for you, and there's nothing in the world that can replicate that feeling. There's nothing in the world. And I come out and I kind of have this crazed look, and I sometimes I'll hit things, but it's so intoxicating. It's such an overwhelming feeling that, for me at least, that's how I express it. But yeah, Jose, first of all, he throws his kicks a lot harder. It's something that cannot be replicated from anywhere else, because there's no other thing in the world where you can think about you can have everything going on in your mind, no matter what it is. And the second you step through that curtain, the second the bell rings, it drains away and it's gone. And even if you're forced to come back to it when that second bell rings or whatever, even if you're forced to come back to it, I feel like you can always come back to it with a fresh mindset. And so yeah, it refreshes you as well as it exhausts you, but there's nothing like it in the world, and there is no feeling that can replicate the feeling that you have when you go out there. And I think one of the coolest things about pro wrestling as a sport, as opposed to any other sport out there, is the people watching it want to watch. The people watching it, most of the people want to, even if it's younger kids, they want to watch. That's what they want to do in that moment. But I've never seen a kid who was watching wrestling that he actually enjoyed that didn't look like he wanted to get in the ring and, beat some ass. So yeah, there's nothing like it, and there's no connection like between a wrestler and the fans.
And just to kind of piggyback off of that, like Anakin said, that roar of the crowd, like you said, Justin, also is, I could say, like, the biggest experience that I've felt so far was after we won the tag team championships the second time.
Yeah, because that was when your kids were there, right?
Exactly, yeah. It had been a little bit over a year since I had seen my kids, and they had never seen me work a match. I was still training by the time they left. So when they actually did see me in the ring, and their first match that they got to see with me, we won the tag team championships for the second time. And then that kind of just takes me back, like when you announced us as the new tag team champions. It kind of threw me back into like, I've always been a big fan of Heath Ledger. So one of my favorite scenes from A Knight's Tale was towards the end when they actually called him by his real name, and they told him, "Your father heard that." Well, that's kind of how I felt at that moment. I heard you say the new tag team champions, Anakin and José Acosta, and all I can think about was your kids just heard that. Like, it's just, now it's something that I can tell them that, following your dreams is possible, if you work at it and if you really want it. It definitely, that moment alone made this whole experience worth it to me. So
yeah, there's always something or someone that you find you end up doing this for. Even if it starts as yourself, it never you always find someone else or find something that you end up doing this for, and it's the thing that makes you not give it up even on the worst days, because as great as pro wrestling is, you're not gonna have every good day, but on all those bad days. Example for me, it's my dad. My dad was the one who got me into wrestling, so every time that I go out there and put on a show, the 3-4 times that I've won the tag team titles, it's always been, like, for me, it's always been about him. And Jose, it's always been about his kids, and it's a lot of it's a lot of emotion that goes, even though, you know, I get told by my trainer, I get told by whoever that, you know, don't, you know, this is a position, but these belts are props. And you can be told that over and over and over again, but the feeling that you get when you know that you accomplished a dream that is real for so many people, that feeling is the most real thing that you could ever have.
And you know, that is something that I kind of get a lot too. You know, like I mentioned to people, tag team champions, and you know, wrestling, and you know, they automatically assume, oh, it's fake, and those are just props. It's not real championships. But if you really think about it, what those championships represent, that in the tag team division, the promoter of the company is actually putting their money on Anakin and myself to go out there and perform for the crowd, that the crowd will go home happy with what we put out and left in the ring. So to me, that is just as good as any real championship in any sport.
Yeah, and Jose, you actually said exactly what I was going to say. You know, a lot of people feel like, well, wrestling's, you know, predetermined, or however you want to term it. So, you know, the belts aren't really, you know, they're not really championships, they're just props, but it shows a tremendous amount of faith and trust in the individual that belt is put on, which is one thing I always try and warn people. And one thing I love about PPW is that you never want to put your faith in a brand where the promoter or the booker has the belt on themselves, because it shows he doesn't have faith in his roster and his guys. You know, they're always going to be beneath him. But, you know, at Premier, it's not like that. And so many guys who otherwise, you know, may not have been given an opportunity that you guys have been given. You know, a lot of people would look at, you know, Anakin and say, oh, well, he's too small. He's never going to be, you know, he's never going to be that 60-minute man. And, you know, you proved him wrong at, what was that, 3 months ago against Matt Vine. And, you know. Yeah. And, but yeah, so Jose, definitely, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. So you guys mentioned earlier about looking at a couple different places to begin your wrestling training and finally coming into Premier Pro Wrestling. But now you've both been with Premier for over 2 years. What is it about Premier that keeps you guys, I mean, besides your multiple championships, what is it about Premier that keeps you guys around here? And, I don't want to say, you know, not expand your horizons, because let's face it, it's Chicago. The independent scene around here doesn't really leave a whole lot to be desired. But what are some of your favorite things about working for Premier Pro Wrestling besides the roar of that crowd that we get?
I mean, to me, it just has to be the locker room in general. Everybody there is just, they got their uniqueness, you know, and everybody just meshes so well. Honestly, they became a bigger part of my family than some of my family members. So, and, you know, constantly seeing the same people over and over. Nobody's trying to outperform anybody, really. Everybody's looking out for each other. Everybody cares that the next man succeeds as well as themselves. But nobody really is thinking on their own to try to be the main attraction, per se. You know, we just all work together. The camaraderie is, I think, the biggest thing that I like. And then just Randy's training style, to me, is he's so knowledgeable in professional wrestling. So I just try to absorb every little bit of detail that he tells me, and I just try to go out and replicate it as best as I can. And then and I'm enjoying it. You know, he's got visions for the company to grow, and honestly, I'm committed to help the company grow as far as he wants to take it, you know. So we're always looking ahead and always trying to do bigger things, not just us, but the company in general. And I think that's what kind of keeps me going, is that other companies are already established, just kind of making their money off of their wrestlers. And since we're not as big of a company, I guess you could say that, but we still work just as hard, if not harder. And I think that kind of shows, you know, just kind of like in YouTube views that we've had as of late. So I'm really excited for that, and I'm ready to keep it going. Honestly, I don't really see an end in sight for myself and PPW. So
yeah, so the way we pride ourselves in, as far as production value versus the attention that we get goes, is we might not have a full house every single night, but the YouTube views, the amount of social media attention that we get, especially considering we run every week out of the same place. There aren't a whole lot of promotions outside of, the bigger ones. So, like OVW and, other promotions of that capacity are the only other indie promotions that I've seen that have that kind of production value that we have, which surely says something special about how hard we work. And we can brag all day long about how hard we work. And as far as that goes, Randy tells us all the time to stay humble about that. And even though there is a lot in PPW that a lot of places don't have, when it comes time to work, every single one of us will put our head down and work together to make PPW what it is right now. And as far as Jose was talking about at the locker room, if you stick around, if you come down, you stick around long enough, you won't only be part of the family, you'll realize that everybody in the family brings something different, and no matter who it is, we either get along, we get along with them, or they don't get along with us, and they decide that it's not worth it. But my point is that if you stick around, you'll be family, because that's the kind of people that are in the locker room. Like you said, everybody wants everybody to do better. And in a normal workplace, a normal office, you would see people keeping their head down, working for themselves. But I have seen time and time again, people come up to me and people go up to each other and have ideas for each other. Different moves, different things to try, even if they're not, wrestling in the same match that night, just something that they saw and thought, oh, this would be cool for, this guy. Really, I don't see any I haven't seen any other, and I haven't been behind the curtain of any other wrestling promotion, but I don't see any other wrestlers doing that. I don't see anybody of any other industry taking that kind of responsibility upon themselves. I think it's definitely something that helps this company to grow from the inside and out.
Yeah, something Randy told me really early on in my tenure with Premier Pro Wrestling is that the mindset can't be what can I do, it has to be what can we do. And he even points back to that old cliche, but it's a cliche because it's so true. Teamwork makes the dream work. And he's said that to me many times, and it's fact of the matter. When you don't have to like each other, but when it's time to go to work, it's time to go to work, and it's time to put on a performance. And that's one thing I love about PPW too, is just that camaraderie. Even if you don't like somebody, you know that you have to put that aside. And if guys aren't willing to put that aside, I can't even tell. You guys have been around 2 years. You've seen plenty of people come and go who they weren't willing to step outside of themselves and be a part of the team. I've been doing this since 2013. I've lost count probably around midway through 2014.
There are a lot of, like you said, there are a lot of people who come through here and decide that it's just not worth it for what it takes. But there's so many different things. Because at this point in my career, sometimes I'll be in the ring and I'll be teaching somebody something. Which is great. I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to do that. But a lot of what I end up telling someone who I'm trying to train, or I'm trying to help figure out how to do something, a lot of that is going to be something that I heard from Randy originally. Drop your ego at the door. Randy was the first person who ever told me that, and just so much, I've found so much wisdom from him, and he's very well developed as a person and as a trainer. He does not let you walk all over him, but he will always forgive you, and he will always support you in whatever decision that you make. Even if it's one that he doesn't like, he's going to support the decisions that you make wholeheartedly, and that shows how important everybody that wrestles here is, not only to him but to each other. So it's just him putting a lot of faith in us and us getting a whole lot of stuff from him. So yeah.
And then and that's kind of similar to what I've noticed, that like Anakin said, we do have And we have had many people come for a week or two and then just kind of say it's not for them.
Yeah.
But from the biggest feel I get, those are most of those people that come through those doors and don't last is because they just expect to come in, and for some reason or another they just want to get in the ring and start doing moves, or just trying to get their face out there. Like I kind of feel like that's like we said earlier, it's kind of everybody has their own reasons behind it, but I don't feel like star power itself is a good motivation enough to come into this business just because of the physicality of it.
Yeah.
People don't understand, the drills that we run, hundreds of hours of drills that we run before we even step foot in our first practice match, let alone our first live match. Yeah. So a lot of people get frustrated over that. I believe that they can't keep up either with the training intensity or whatever it may be, and they just kind of give up on it. And it's like I said, we kind of notice that, and we just don't let it get under our skin. We keep going. We have our own family. We have our vision, and we're always going to be there and staying humble for each other and helping each other out.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many students, people that have stayed and have not stayed. I can't tell you how many of them have told me after the first or second week that they've been here. It's like, man, these drills are kicking my ass. This is way harder than I thought it's going to be. I'm Jose, I'm sure you've heard it too. Yeah. But there's like countless people will come in here and, run through the ropes and decide that it's not for them. And it's a big part. It's what you said. It's either they don't want it or they want it for the wrong reasons. And pretty much when you come here, you have the option to learn what it's really about, and you learn how to love it the right way, or you don't get very far. And that's really as simple as it is.
Yeah, and that's the first thing I always say to people who, they drop the F word about wrestling, they call it fake. And a little less than 4 years ago, I was actually a referee for a short time, and I did go through a camp once where, I ran those cardio drills, and I did that, and needless to say, I ended up outside. I mean, it was the summertime, but I ended up outside laying on my back on the pavement, and I eventually ended up puking my guts out. So those drills, I mean, if you've never experienced like what a pro wrestling drill is like, especially at Premier, I mean, it will kick your ass. So I mean, I doubt anybody listening to this right now is someone who would consider pro wrestling to be fake. But if you know anybody who has that mindset, invite them to come in for a tryout and run some of those drills. They'll see pretty quick how fake it is. But so we've established why your heart's in Premier Pro Wrestling, why you've chosen this as your home. But over the last 2 to 2.5 years, both of you guys have had some epic matches. I mean, you're both bona fide main eventers. I mean, you've been in there with world champions, both of you. You've obviously had some of the greatest tag team matches, not just in Premier Pro Wrestling, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it, in professional wrestling today. No, I mean it. But I kind of want to get your guys, take a little trip down memory lane with the two of you and kind of get your perspective on it. What are some of the favorite matches that you guys have had, like off the top of your head?
Wow.
Do you want me? I got a couple in mind.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to give you 4, and then if more come up, I'll start talking about them. But the first one was the match I had with Jay Bradley. It was a while ago, but So Jay Bradley, first of all, if you don't know who Jay Bradley is, he's a guy he wrestles on big, he's a big time indie wrestler. He wrestles, on OVW. He used to wrestle in TNA, but he came and he cut a promo on me, and I think either like a couple weeks before the last time he was there, I think it was the tag gauntlet where they made new tag champs for like the first time, and like he just beat my ass for 50% of that match. That's all it was.
I remember I came in on that match and he was like, he clubbed me once and I was out.
Yeah, and then he talked shit to my grandma for who knows how long. Yeah. And I just came back and Randy was like, oh, this is happening. I was like, okay. But yeah, so it was only like, it was, I don't know, 10 minutes long, but he was...
That was definitely your David and Goliath moment.
Yeah. Thanks for throwing in the towel. I appreciate that. No, yeah, I definitely learned a lot from him, even only having that one match. That one was a lot of fun. The next two were two weeks in a row, but it's the two that we had. Because you remember we had a 30-minute draw, and then we did a 40-minute match the week after that. And that, I think it was really to get us, like, because we had teamed a couple times before, but I think those two matches were really to, like, get us over, like, individually, but also show that we could work together. And I know we had a couple before that, but I think those two were really the ones that, like, cemented us as a tag team. So that one was a lot of fun. And then, of course, my 60-minute match that I had with Vine was a while ago, but yeah, I don't think I've ever been through that kind of like euphoria of only being like 40 minutes in. It's like, crap, I have to do another third of the match. And then just, yeah, cause I went through so many, cause it was 2 out of 3 falls. So, and like I think he got his fall like 20 minutes in, and then I didn't get mine till like 50. But that was the comeback, so I was like, well, crap, what are we supposed to do? Yeah. So I don't even remember what we did, but we made it through the last 10 minutes. And then I remember, for some reason, I remember like those last like 30 seconds or so being like able to like do stuff. But that was a very long match, but it was fun. So all right, Jose, what do you got?
I mean, I don't have any 60-minute Ironman matches under my belt yet, but I mean,
start slow.
You know, after a 30-minute match, you know, you're just completely exhausted, beat. Honestly, you can't even think straight. So for somebody to be able to complete 60 minutes one-on-one is definitely an amazing thing, and it's awesome watching you do it. Wow. Me personally, I mean, I have obviously all the matches against you are always fun, exciting. They're always fast-paced. Never know what's going to happen. We're both kind of unpredictable at some times. So that's always fun. But, I mean, I think my favorite match that we've had so far, by far, honestly, just because of how personally it affects me, is the second time we won the tag team championships. You know, hands down, I think that's one of the most emotional days that I've ever felt, you know, to see my kids out in the crowd and cheering for me, and them having to actually come in the ring and hold the belts and stuff like that. I know.
So when you got that tag,
it was definitely something that, you know, people definitely noticed the difference when I got out of there. People were definitely telling me that they felt the emotion behind every strike that I was throwing.
Yeah.
You know, so it was definitely something completely different. So I think that made it that much more special. Yeah. And then obviously we were 2-time champs at the time. So that was definitely a very big accomplishment for me. You know, I remember sitting in my room when I was in the Navy, sitting in the barracks playing video game or watching Raw and saying, you know, I'm never gonna be that guy coming through those curtains, you know. So I kind of always think of that now, and it's like now we're champions, you know. So it's definitely that's probably definitely my top match was our second time around as tag team champions.
Yeah, and I'd say, well, first of all, I want to say something about Sensei and Estra. Those are like, those two guys are all-stars as far as working with us. There's nothing like it, and you can watch any of we've had countless number of matches, Sensei and Estra and us, and I think all 3 of our tag title wins were with those guys, and personally I think that was probably our best title win, that one. But yeah, no, those two guys are, as far as team and thinking, you know, I'm thinking about this, they haven't tagged in probably a couple months, right? Because you know, Inestra has been the world champ for a while, and they haven't really tagged since then. Exactly. So, you know, even like before any of that happened, and it was Sensei and Inestra, tagging, those two guys they're just all stars to work with in the ring.
I'll agree with you on that one. They definitely know what they're doing in there. I've learned so much just watching them. Our rivalry is definitely very heated, and like you said, we've had countless matches against them. But at the same time, if you go back and watch every single match, you'll never find one that's exactly the same. No. So I think that's the special part of it, that we can work Sensei and Nestra for as many times, but you will never see the same match. Yeah. It will always be entertaining. It will always be emotional. You will always feel the emotion in the match because everybody brings it. Yeah. And everybody's definitely good at their craft. Others more than I still consider myself pretty green, so I'm still learning and coming. We're learning and coming up, but at the same time, like when you see stuff like that everybody just helps each other, it kind of just makes you forget that how new you are to this industry, or you just want to do your best, and that kind of pushes you sometimes to do even stuff that you haven't even tried before. So it always pushes you to do better.
Yeah, you guys mentioned that the match where you won the tag team championships for the second time, and that tag, I mean, that wasn't a hot tag. That tag practically burned the building down. But I mean, I remember that night so vividly, and just it was raw emotion. And you know what? Those are the moments that make it all worth it. All the hardships, all those bad days that you have. I mean, it's the moments like that are why we do what we do. So, because there's nothing like it. So, we covered why you guys wanted to get into pro wrestling, some of the favorite matches that you've had. Now, I kind of want to know, what do you both find to be the most challenging aspect of being in professional wrestling? I mean, besides the cardio drills, besides the, constantly running every week, which, I mean, number one, it's a good thing because, you guys have developed, leaps and bounds along with the rest of the roster by getting this opportunity to work more, but also, having to put aside a lot in your personal lives and things like that. So kind of want to get your take on what you guys think is the most challenging thing about being a pro wrestler, because a lot of the times the most challenging stuff is also the most rewarding.
Oh yeah, I think for me, trying to not burn out. A lot of us have full lives outside of PPW. Myself working 2 jobs, and training and then performing on every Saturday. That commitment alone, just being there every single Saturday, is such a big commitment. I've only missed 1 Saturday in 2 years, I believe, if I'm not wrong. And it's definitely very taxing on the body, just impact-wise, to keep your motivation going when you're not feeling at your best, or you're still sore from the training the day before, and now you have to go out and put on a show. To not let those things get to your head and affect your performance, I think that's something that you always have to keep in check, and always keep yourself motivated. Just keep driving and not giving up on yourself.
Yeah, there's 2 big things for me. One is similar to what Jose said, the commitment that it takes. I found challenging, and gets more challenging as you go on, because as at least for me, I started out and I was a teenager who had no friends, and I'm in college now, and I'm living my life alongside wrestling, and it's difficult because it's difficult when you have friends that you have to back out of parties and get-togethers. And it's not to say that I wouldn't rather be here, because I would, but it is difficult to have kind of friends who you have to back out on a lot. So commitment can be difficult sometimes. But also, like, if you go out one week and you have a bad match, or even just an okay match, personally for me, that gets to me. That does get to me probably a little more than it should, and that really affects my mood a lot. And it's not like a bad match is going to ruin my whole week, but I think that can be something that's difficult. So I guess putting the proper amount of thought into stuff that goes down during matches and during shows and stuff like that. And it's difficult, because if someone, whoever you're working with comes back and tells you that was a piece of crap, it's difficult to not let that get to you. At least for me, I'm a sensitive person, but it's difficult because they're your family, and you care what they think, and you wanna do good to impress them, and you want to do good to impress yourself. So I think letting go of different emotions, and then also time commitments can be a struggle.
Yeah, it's definitely not just the physical burnout that you guys have to deal with. I'm lucky in the sense that all I have to do is hold a microphone and talk. But yeah, the emotional wear that it can put on you, because I mean, you know, I've had some nights where I was, and I'm not even sugarcoating. I mean, I was seriously contemplating like hanging it up, because I just would have a really bad night. You know, the crowd would be not lousy, but you know, you couldn't pull anything out of them, and then, you know, I've screwed up match orders. You know, there was one time I think we were doing a gauntlet years back. I screwed up the order of the participants, so like 2 guys who weren't supposed to work together ended up having to, you know, call everything on the fly, and yeah, so it's, and stuff like that. You know, I'm like you, Anakin. I don't have very thick skin. Yeah. So I take things kind of personally. So and Randy's gotten on my case, you know, quite a few times. But you know, it's the thing to always remember is that if you're being criticized or anything, there's a reason for it. Yeah. And you have to use that as your motivation, because at the end of the day, it's like, why are we doing this if we don't love it? But yeah, so I can totally relate to that, and having those bad nights, and you know, not having thick skin, it can really kind of get to you. But again, it's all for the love of the game. So let's kind of bring it up a little bit more and talk about, you know, you guys obviously have accomplished a lot in your short careers. And Jose, you mentioned you're 32, but I don't think a lot of people know this. Anakin is only 19, and he's already accomplished. He's a multiple-time champion. You know, he's the 60-minute man against Matt Vine. So both have already accomplished significant achievements in Premier Pro Wrestling. But what I want to know now is, where do you guys go from here? What are your goals as far as pro wrestling goes, short-term, long-term? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? You know, kind of one of those questions.
For myself, I think that I'm just kind of enjoying the ride as of now, if I guess you can kind of say. Like I said, I use it a lot for just to kind of escape the reality of some of the stuff that does go on in life sometimes. So that's always my biggest drive, to keep coming back and doing it. And I don't know, like I guess I'm open to what the future brings. You know, like I'm committed to keep working hard and, you know, reinventing myself and stuff like that. And I guess I don't have like an actual goal in mind per se, but that doesn't stop me from working any less hard, because, you know, just because I'm not out looking for where my next adventure is going to be, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to get noticed, you know, by performing the best that I can. I just kind of wait and see how it pans out, you know. Like I said, I'm 32. I'm already kind of in the late stages of professional wrestling career, you know, so I already kind of came into the industry with that mindset, but at the same time, I'm not letting it limit my abilities or what I put out in the ring. And as long as I'm healthy and can continue doing it, I'm just kind of, you know, like I said, I have PPW in my future for the foreseeable future. And then if anything comes out of that in the future, then, I mean, I guess we'll have to weigh the options and see what it is and see if it benefits, you know, kind of like my vision of what I want in life.
And you know, there's nothing wrong with having your head in the moment. And, you know, more people are inclined to focus on that than they are about, you know, where they're going. Instead, they'd rather focus on where they're at. So, I mean, absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, what about you, Anakin?
First of all, I want to say DDP was like 45 when he started wrestling. So, you got time, buddy. Well, so I've been going to community college for the past half year or so. And my plan right now is that I'm going to transfer to somewhere kind of not far away from here, but it's going to be far away enough to where I might not be able to make it up every single week. So, of course, I'm not sure exactly what my plans are for the next foreseeable future. And, you know, everybody has those long-term goals, those dream matches that they think about. And, of course, you know, I do too. Just, you know, looking at some of the talent in like WWE and NXT, like some of those guys, I would like example like Tommaso Ciampa or Cameron Grimes. If one of those guys, that would be like a dream for me if I got to wrestle them. So really my biggest goal right now is to have that background and to have that availability and to have that standing as someone who is, I'm young and I can work hard and look, I've done this. I'm hoping that this will open more doors for me, and whether it's higher ups or whether it stops here, don't really have my life planned out, but as long as I can be here in PPW, as long as I can be of help to PPW, I'm always gonna come back. This is always gonna be my home. And I'm sure the same is for you. But yeah, short term, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna continue to make my name. And, after that, the sky is the limit, as I've been proving for the past 2.5 years. But long-term goals, I don't know what wrestling has in store for me yet. So
I kind of, I'm not saying like I don't have goals in wrestling. I guess you could say my biggest goal is to just keep wrestling, just because I just love it. I have a blast every time I'm out there, and I can't see myself stopping anytime soon. So for me, honestly, just wrestling as long as I can at this point is a win for me. But also, like, there's other people that do have those goals, WWE and those dream matches. But at the same time, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, as I see it. You over-obsess on your goals, and all of a sudden, that little mistake in the match that you make, it suddenly becomes, in your own mind, way bigger than it actually is. Yeah. And then it could kind of be self-defeating at some time. So, the approach I'm taking, just go out there, do my best that I can, always try to improve on, I have those bad matches, and I'll listen to the feedback and I'll correct it the following week, and that's kind of just how I've been doing it, and it just kind of keeps me motivated to keep improving. Like, just any little negative feedback that I get, I make it a point to correct it that following week, and if I mess something else up that following week, I'll correct it the following week, so, as long as I have that mentality of I'm gonna be here next time and I will make it better, there's really no way you can't improve, and you're not focusing and wasting your energy on negative thoughts that, did Vince McMahon see that, or he's never going to call me now, or, all these self-defeating thoughts, especially me, because I am a bit of an overthinker. Yeah. It's kind of gotten me into some hot water lately, so, yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely something that I try to keep in check also.
Well, the first time, it was one of my really, really early matches. It was with Matt Vine. And it was not great. I don't remember the reason, but it was not a great match. And it's just, we got back there and we talked, and I was really bummed out because I knew it was bad. I knew it was not a great match at all. And so, but, Vine, first of all, a lot of people think that Vine's, kind of hard, and he is. But when it comes down to it, he's a very caring person. And something that he told me, and nobody will ever believe that Vine said this, but he said, focus on the bad things for maybe 5 minutes, and then you need to focus on the good things for the rest of the night. And so, every time I go out and I have maybe a match that wasn't so great with, someone that maybe I've helped kind of come into who they are, or maybe, just someone that is newer than me who hasn't heard that before, I try and make that a point to tell them, you focus on the bad things first 5 minutes. Then after that, that's when you need to let it go.
That is such underrated advice. People, myself included, want to dwell on, these things that went wrong and beat ourselves up. And actually, it's funny that you bring that up, because I actually got that advice. I heard that advice for the first time just a week ago before we recorded this. Somebody was telling me a story, and they were saying, like, they were having a really bad day and in their head, and they couldn't figure out how to get out of the funk. And then they decide, you know what? I'm going to be pissed off about this for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to move on. So, I mean, and I've even, I've started adopting that in my own life with the stuff that I'm currently going through, and it's amazing at how much just letting yourself vent out that frustration for 5 to 10 minutes and then moving on. I mean, it's such underrated advice. And then, also what you guys said about just kind of being in the present moment as well. I feel like, so many people who get into this, they have those long-term goals. They see themselves in NXT. They see themselves headlining WrestleMania, and goals are great. I think everybody needs to have those goals, but on the same note, I think also being present in the moment, and then also openness to the future, is something that is sorely needed. Because like you said, Jose, what happens when, somebody works so hard for a goal and then something happens and they don't achieve it? They spend the rest of their lives just kicking themselves over the fact that it didn't happen. So having that openness to the future, I think that's a really strong quality to have, and I think it's really commendable that you guys are looking at it that way. And, you know, having your goals in professional wrestling, but also saying, you know, like 1% of all people who do this, you know, make it. So, and honestly, I'll just say it flat out. I mean, I think you guys, with a little bit more time, I think you would be, you know, NXT quality. I really think you would. But just having that openness to the future and saying, you know, if it doesn't last, if this were all to end tomorrow, yeah, it would suck, but what can I do except move forward? Anakin, Jose, thank you guys so very much for taking time out of your schedules to come and talk on the podcast here on Patreon. Really appreciate you guys kind of opening up your skulls to us and letting us take a peek inside your mind. You guys, having only been around for 2 years, I think there's a lot that's still not known about the two of you, like who you are, you know, behind the boots and the tights and all that. So definitely appreciate your time, and we thank all of you as well for not only tuning in, but for your continued support of us here on Patreon. And this is the only place you can find the Premier Planet podcast. So if you think somebody would like this episode, definitely advise them to pitch in per month, and they'll get more episodes, and we got some more exciting episodes coming your guys' way. So Anakin, Jose, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next time. Premier Planet, we really hope you enjoyed this free episode of the Premier Planet podcast here on YouTube with Anakin and Jose Acosta. Thank you so much to those guys for being a part of the Premier Planet podcast. But again, this podcast has already been up on Patreon for a week by the time this was posted to YouTube. So if you want immediate access to all of our exclusive content, and you don't want to wait a week to have to see it here on YouTube.
And matches coming.
Matches, full tapings coming, more tiers, more rewards coming your way for being a supporter on Patreon. And if you want to be along for the ride, patreon.com/Premier Pro Wrestling. That's all it takes. Your monthly contributions, they help us so much. But for those monthly contributions, we want to make sure you're getting your money's worth. And so as we go, we are going to give you more content. We're going to give you week early content.
We're going to earn it. We're going to earn it.
Exactly. We're going to earn it. So thank you folks again for watching this video, and we will see you on YouTube. But a week early, we hope to see you on Patreon.
We'll talk soon.